Hey everybody, it's Betsy and Thomas. Today we are decoding Trump tweets of November 27th, 2018. Hey, you know, Thomas, yesterday we were decoding Trump tweets and Trump was tweeting a lot about Mueller. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, he's still tweeting about Mueller, so I am thinking that maybe POTUS is sending you a message that you didn't do good enough, digging down deep enough about the dirty globalist SES Herr Mueller of the Fourth Reich.
Well, after what you said about him the other day, I didn't think there was much left of him, you know. It's like beating a dead horse. But anyway, sure, we can do that. And it's always an honor to do anything to help support Trump. You know, he is one of the most amazing people that we've seen in American history.
Don't you just love it? He's just kicking ass and taking names down at the border, isn't he?
Oh, what he's done there is absolutely historic. We don't have any tweets on that, but I'm jumping up and down for joy. So is the whole conclave. For the first time, we used the military properly to defend ourselves and our border when we're being attacked. Okay, that is beautiful. So what we have there is a clear reality that we are in a war with Mexico, which the only people saying that I know
once
of
again, it's the
is
globalists.
us.
Now, we're going to get right into that. A few things. Yes, yesterday I said M16. I meant MI6. I was thinking of M13, and it gets quite confusing. And the other thing is I said that we needed to round up all the Jesuits and the pedophile priests and Cardinal Dolan, and we need to put them on a boat, and we need to send them to the Queen. Of course, I didn't mean the Queen. I meant they need to go back to the Pope. So
that's right. And the other day, I would just want to thank the person out there who caught me making a mistake when I said accidentally, when I was thinking about George Soros and his attack on Romania, that he was from Romania. He's, of course, from Hungary, and that, of course, Orbán, the president of Hungary, has kicked George Soros out of the country, basically, but he kicked his university out, and many of his non-governmental organizations, which have wonderful names, but actually are doing the evil work of the open society, the open borders agenda of George Soros. So George Soros was, of course, Hungarian, and he was a Nazi in Hungary, and he worked with his uncle to steal things from his own relatives and send them off to the concentration camps. No one could be any more vile than him, and he is kicked out of his own country. So don't tell me he's an American, and don't tell me he's Hungarian either. Neither country wants him.
Okay, so we do make mistakes occasionally because we are doing this like you were just sitting in the kitchen with us, and we're just yakking at you like your parents might. And so we try to correct things as we can. Now, in the description box are some links to many articles that we've already written about Mueller, so we're not going to be able to include everything in the talk, but if you want to do some more research, just drop in there and look at it. So let's get started. The phony witch hunt continues, but Mueller and his gang of angry Dems are only looking at one side, not the other. Wait until it comes out how horribly and viciously they are treating people, ruining lives for them refusing to lie. Mueller is a conflicted prosecutor gone rogue.
You know, Herr Mueller is one of the most vicious lawyer fixers in Washington, D.C. D.C. stands for the District of Crime. Because why? That's where the feds are protected. You notice no Fed gets convicted unless they want that Fed out. So that's the way that it works. Who's the top guy? Goes back and forth between the Department of Justice and the FBI. That would be Herr Mueller. And when Herr Mueller is not there, what's he out doing? Oh, he's out, you wouldn't even believe it, with HSBC, giving them incredible breaks as he rotates around, investigates them at one point while he's in the government, and then goes out and helps them get off. Same thing that Comey did. So Comey and Mueller work hand in glove as they go from one corporate organization to the next when they're not in their fake positions. And when they go in those positions, it's not to be the head of the FBI. They are there as law enforcement fixers. And they're there to protect who? That would be the Clintons and the White House rogue CIA, which is, of course, formed by Daddy Bush.
But this is the ultimate form of camouflage, isn't it? When you want to take over another government, infiltrate within their organizations, they may call it one thing and think that they're protecting Americans and there's law and order, but in reality, the FBI and the DOJ have been infiltrated so that they are there to protect these swamp creatures.
They have so many people working for them. Look what they do. Nothing. Once every few months, the FBI does something, but they're always involved in every single serial killer that they've usually have a long record on those people, and they have investigated them, they've interviewed them, released them completely. Everything's okay, and they go out and murder people. That's what the FBI is good for. In other words, developing assets like the CIA. That's what they do. The FBI is there and has been from the beginning to blackmail people in the federal government for control. And that's what Mueller did. That's what Comey did. That's why Comey had all 33,000 of Hillary's emails on a jump drive and on 6 CDs. And Christopher Wray has them. He testified to that. And they're still in his office, and nothing has been done. These federal agencies are so corrupt that the Ethics Committee found Robert Mueller to be absolutely a wonderful, sterling, ethical saint. Oh, you must be kidding. Robert Mueller, the man who covered up 9/11? I mean, let's not even go further than that. The man who instigated the U.S. Patriot Act? The man who allowed the 911 Commission to lie the entire time? The man who was in direct contact with the people who carried out 911. The head of the FBI didn't notice that Tower 7 fell into its own footprint, though it wasn't hit by a plane, and had no excuse to do so, and no steel reinforced building has ever collapsed into its footprint just by fire. I mean, he is the worst of the worst. And so when we talk about him, when he was in California, he said,
what was he doing in California?
When he was an attorney general in California,
okay.
He set up the evidence trails so that it would protect the federal government, so the federal government could get away with anything and no evidence could ever be brought against them. And yet the evidence that is needed to prosecute a case in federal cases is so slim now that you need absolutely nothing. All you need is the 302 note of an FBI agent, and that stands as evidence. In other words, an FBI agent's word is as good as law, and these are the kind of things that Mueller brought into existence, right along with Comey, and right along with his other buddies in the Department of Justice. They have written justice out of the Department of Justice. Now, I'm not even getting started.
Wait a minute. He was working in California, so then he probably knows these Ninth Circuit Court judges very well and probably directs them. I mean, we looked as soon as this John Stephen Tigar, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Tigar, raised his head because he was going to try to stop Trump with these invaders, mercenary invaders coming into our country, this corrupt judge. We started investigating him and found out that early in his career, he and Mueller were very tight. They ran some cases together. So he's a Mueller guy.
Yes, and he was supposed to be on a special committee going after basically patent theft and cyber warfare and so on and so forth. He did none of that. But then he becomes the head basically of almost every single major social media group, one after the next, where he is a failure and yet just keeps being put into one position after the next. Why? Because Mueller is using him to get the crypto keys in a war against Hillary Clinton and her company called Intrust. And so there's a war going on between Mueller right now. The only person big enough to stand up to Hillary Clinton is the man who delivered Hillary Clinton's uranium One deal, yellow cake uranium, from Hillary Clinton personally to Vlad the Impaler Putin. Unbelievable that this is the man who is investigating rigging in the election.
Or Russia collusion.
The
man who carries a briefcase of yellow cake uranium. And then, you've got Jeff Sessions, who was covering this up, allowing it, and then covering it up.
10 years, Uranium One went on with Andrew McCabe being the person running cover for Vladimir Putin being in America, running extortion on our own nuclear plants with our own uranium. And who was involved in that? That was Robert Mueller, and Andrew McCabe was underneath him, and he was the one covering it up for Robert Mueller. And Robert Mueller personally delivered the yellow cake uranium to make sure that Vladimir Putin believed that the Oak Ridge enrichment facility was going to be able to produce the level and quality of uranium that he wanted, because he's trying to take over the uranium market in the world away from the Queen. The Queen also is in a battle with Putin here in America. We've gone into this great detail. Robert Mueller covered all that up. Now, the Dems that aren't being looked at, when Trump says it's one-sided, that's because the server, of course, has never been looked at, and there's reasons for that. But why aren't we going after the U.S. Digital Service, which Eric Schmidt created the 2016 presidential meddling? Why don't we go after Optech? We know that Optech was the software used in 2016 and in the recent election. Why don't we go after the rigged election machines? How about the rigged MSM, the mainstream media? How about the Democrats who created the Russian dossier? How about Fusion GPS? How about Christopher Steele? How about Stephen Halpern? How about the whole British Privy Council, the Queen's Privy Council? How about Jeffrey Patty? How about Lord Malik Brown? How about Alexander Downer? How about Robert Hannigan? Why don't we go after the very people who were involved directly with Russian collusion and Russian meddling? Not one of them has been looked at. As we said yesterday, Mueller has indicted 25 Russian ham sandwiches, and isn't it funny that the only company that shows up to contest him is a catering company? Ham sandwiches, folks. Concord Catering Company is Putin's caterer. And so what did Putin's caterer Concord do? They came over and contested the validity of Mueller's investigation to begin with, because it has no validity. And they almost won the other day, but of course, Judge Roberts probably came down from the Supreme Court and told the judge who was looking into this, who had been very, very kind, Dabney, what's her name? Hughes? Friedrich Dabney?
Yes. And when we talk about Justice Roberts, can we always add the adjective like corrupt or, compromised or globalist? Because, the media's done a very good job painting such a beautiful picture of Roberts, and we find out that he is just nasty corrupt.
Well, he is the supreme monarchical fake news justice of the Supreme Court. So I don't know that there's a name for that, especially when you stand up and say in a partisan way that there is no partisanship anywhere in his justice system. And when he recuses Judge Contreras from above after he's already been impaneled and brought judgments against people in the Robert Mueller in the case against Trump. I mean, there is so much corruption in the fake justice system. It's disgusting. So when we say Supreme Court Justice John Roberts, I want to spit.
Instead of SCOTUS, just say POS.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have to ask this because, I know it sounds very conspiratorial, but I mean, it is looking at us right in the face. Is SES Herr Mueller like a Nazi from that strand that came over to America and just took us over?
I think if he wasn't, he certainly fits the bill, and he and Angela Merkel could have stood right next to Hitler or right next to Franco or right next to Benito Mussolini. Any of the fascists, these people fit right in.
Well, it's like Henry Kissinger. Remember when we were kids and Henry Kissinger was rolled out? And first of all, in school, we were always taught that, the Germans are bad, the Russians are bad, all of them were bad. And then we wound up with the Secretary of State, and we listened to him on television. He had this thick German accent, and I asked my daddy, why is he the Secretary of State? And nobody could answer the question for me. I mean, are we looking at that and nobody's asking the obvious question?
Because it's the Washington District of Crime. It isn't the Washington District of Columbia. Columbia has left. She flew away a long time ago because there's been so little justice. She's come back now because of Trump, and she sits on the Capitol looking down, crying, because what she's seeing is a Herr Mueller is running America exactly like the fascists ran certain countries in Europe, and the fascists are running certain countries in Europe as we speak. So fascism has not gone away, and it's simply become a political party in America. It's called the far left, and it's nothing more than where socialism always goes. So what's going on with Herr Mueller? Let's go to the next tweet.
I wanted to read that. The fake news media builds Bob Mueller up as a saint, when in actuality he's the exact opposite. He is doing tremendous, big caps there, damage in our criminal justice system, where he is only looking at one side and not the other. Heroes will come of this, and it won't be Mueller.
What's going to happen here is, as we said, the longer that Robert Mueller, Herr SS Field Marshal Robert Mueller, continues his special investigation, it's going to tear down the Justice Department. It's going to tear down the special counsel regulations. It's going to tear down the ability to have grand jury. Because why? Grand juries are obviously now, everyone in the street knows this. Anyone with two neurons and an axon to connect them knows that this is fake justice. And what has happened is Mueller has shown how bad it is, because he's done such a bad job indicting 25 Russian ham sandwiches and getting other people for stupid stuff and spending $30 million, which we'll go to here in a minute. But Mueller is the big fixer, and he's come and he thought he could fix everything, but really what he's doing is he's covering his own trail of crime, folks. And that trail always includes his bunk buddies, Rod Rosenstein, Andrew McCabe, James Comey. They're all together. They might as well just be a troll with four heads, because they have been doing this since the 70s. They've been stealing everything of value and always declaring it to be, of course, a federal national security emergency. And that's why Crossfire Hurricane to this very day continues under Herr Mueller's direction, but it was started by fake evidence with John Brennan. Actually, no evidence, as we know, but the fake calls, the fake rumors of tapes of Trump being in compromised positions and all of this stuff. But what's really going on? This is simply a propaganda hit piece, exactly like Fusion GPS did with the Russian dossier. It is indeed a CIA counterintelligence operation against Trump during the election and now sitting President Trump. So we are allowing John Brennan to go on the news and run as a buffer for what the CIA did and is still doing against our own sitting president, who is duly elected. They seem to think that they are above the law, they are above we the people, and they have been for a long time, since the White House has basically become rogue CIA, and that's the way that it works, since Daddy Bush has shown them all how to go out and to create crime families. And these crime families are now supported by people like Robert Mueller, like James Comey. They work for the crime families. Sometimes they work for both sides, the Democrats and the Republicans. They're fixers. That's what they do. And when they're not fixing, then they're out in criminal positions, like in Mellon Optima, where Mueller himself received so much money illegally, it's absurd, in offshore accounts, where James Comey goes out and works for Lockheed Martin and gets them off with only small fees after they steal trillions of dollars, or HSBC, both he and Mueller.
And you know, they're real suckers, because they had to spend all this time getting all this money stashed away in all their offshore accounts, and now they can't even take off and enjoy it. They have to work a 9-to-5 job just to protect their butts from going to prison.
I've said before, they must hate that, Betsy. That must just absolutely kill them.
Hey, we're out here having fun, living our retirement, and they are saddled to a desk protecting themselves.
And here's what I said from the beginning. No one has contested me on this, and we haven't found the exact account, but I can assure you that when James Comey took the job, he was offered $100 million, $10 million a year in an offshore account for the time he's in the FBI being a fixer for the Clintons. That's the way it works, folks. You don't think that a man who makes and steals from the United States government by giving breaks to companies like HSBC Bank, like Lockheed Martin, when they get hundreds of billions of dollars of theft fines brought against them and they're supposed to pay it, these jerks go out and reduce that to next to nothing, then go and work for them as their legal counsel or as their advisors and get paid tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars for what they did illegally. That's what they do. That's what goes on. This is standard. To think that the Ethics Committee approved Robert Mueller is insanity. To think that anyone would think that James Comey would take that job for that small amount of money, even though he is SES and he gets bigger money than the standard civil service, it doesn't matter. That's peanuts. That's peanuts. He could be out there doing the same thing that Paul Manafort did. And remember, Paul Manafort made millions and millions of dollars by one single political campaign for Viktor Yanukovych in Ukraine.
Well, Mueller is getting pretty desperate to put somebody away. I mean, it feels so terrible about George Papadopoulos and the 14 days he has to go to jail for this. And what's up with Manafort and Roger Stone? And
well, that's what Trump is referring to here in the way that Mueller destroys people's lives. His job is to destroy people's lives and to try to get them to lie. And that's what Trump is insinuating in a tweet here. Mueller is trying to get these people by torturing them through legal torture, by bankruptcy.
Oh, you mean
by
he's doing
jail.
it Nazi style?
Total Nazi style. How about solitary confinement for Paul Manafort?
Let's continue on with this tweet, which started in the tweet before. All right, heroes will come of this, and it won't be Mueller and his terrible gang of angry Democrats. Look at their past, and look where they come from. The now $30 million witch hunt continues, and they've got nothing but ruined lives. Where is the server? Let these terrible people go back to the Clinton Foundation and Justice Department.
30 million? Ha! What a joke. Pre-approved $100 million per year for any special counsel. I told you that they will run this bill up huge. That is the tip of the iceberg. That is what we know on the surface. That is nothing compared to all the money that is spent by the other agencies that have been supporting this stupid group of lawyers. 30 million just for them. Okay? No, this is a travesty. This is worse than a disgrace. This is a ripoff. Plus, as he says, let these people go back to the Clinton Foundation. That's right, some of them have worked for the Clinton Foundation, the Justice Department, the rigged Justice Department, and back to WilmerHale, the law firm that he came from, good old Herr Mueller, with a group of his people, which show that from the get-go, they were in conflict because WilmerHale is the law firm for who? Paul Manafort, and for many other people that are part of this case. There is so much conflict of interest that he should have never, ever even been considered in a jillion years to be the person to run this. Now, let's remember, as they're making the $30 million, each of those lawyers is an SES member. They get all kinds of amazing benefits, folks. I don't even want to go into how much it makes me want to vomit. They get everything you can imagine from the government during the entire time that they're working on this stupid case. And they're SES members, which is basically for life. And they get $100 million a year pre-approved so that Mueller has infinite money. And he also has $50 million being given by Oleg Deripaska, George Soros, and other millionaires from Hollywood who are supporting the Penn Quarter Group to continue the smear campaign against Trump. $50 million there also. So don't forget, this is basically an endless witch hunt that is supported by endless money.
And Mueller, before we go on, because his 9/11 operation was really to cover up who was doing it, he kept us from knowing the truth about the domestic terrorism that came from George Bush and Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney and all of those neocons that we've written extensively about. And these people then went out and committed further crimes against not only Americans, but people around the world. So I ask you, if you are in another country and you have legal ways to take down these rogue operations that are running havoc in America and is spilling over into your country, please do your part to take them down.
You mentioned George Papadopoulos. He went one day to jail, then he went the rest of the 13 days for his 14 days total, and he wanted to change his plea, but they wouldn't even let him. That's how corrupt this thing is. They had to get him in jail so they could say that they had other people who did jail time. And what did they get him in jail time for? Lies which were part of a frame-up that Robert Mueller was certainly, 100% certainly part of James Comey's and John Brennan's conspiracy against Trump. You can 100% guarantee that Robert Mueller was giving Comey advice the entire time. That's absolutely for certain. Now, when he says...
Well, good, then we'll know it's not good advice in the end.
Oh, no, it's terrible advice. And so the ruined lives that Trump is talking about here are all the people who've had these subpoenas brought against them, including Jerome Corsi and all the many others. Jerome Corsi's cleaning lady, Jerome Corsi's dog walker, Jerome Corsi's car mechanic. I mean, they went after everybody who had anything to do with anything Republican, and nobody with anything to do, no matter how guilty, with anybody to do with Democrats.
I'm still suspect about the Corsi thing because we know that Mueller and Corsi go back together. They've worked together before.
Oh, yes.
So are we seeing a little false flag here? Corsi, I'm in a bind here. Why don't you take the hit and let me, and then we'll figure it out later? What's going on with the two of them?
Well, look, it's very simple. George Corsi is the counterbalance to Roger Stone. They're doing the same to Roger Stone. Roger Stone, Alex Jones. Jerome Corsi, Alex Jones. All of them said they had contacted Guccifer 2.0. And because of that, because they went online and they contacted Guccifer 2.0, who was, I think, on Twitter or some online account, and they had a back and forth with him. And because one of them said, and that was Jerome Corsi, that he knew that Julian Assange was about ready to release some very damnable stuff about Hillary, and he had supposed foreknowledge of that, and they're saying that he was part of that, so therefore he must be a Russian because it was the Russians who hacked Hillary's DNC and possessed Hillary's emails. That's complete nonsense. We'll go into that in just a second. So, because Trump says, where's the server? So you got to ask the question, where's the server? Well, here's the deal. The server had on it all kinds of emails, of course, because of Podesta's account and because of Hillary's account. We know what they say. Read them. WikiLeaks. Read them, folks. They clearly say that George Soros was in charge of their campaign, that George Soros had given illegally to their campaign, and that there was election fraud, that there was clearly election fraud in 17 cases with Bernie and the primaries, that they were using this hit system on another aspect of the DNC server that was going after their donors, and they were stealing all kinds of Bernie donor information. Everybody's donor information was being stolen and given to Hillary. Plus, we know of the election fraud, campaign fraud, of drawing money down from all the states and giving it to Hillary, and all the fake checks that were written, large checks, and then divided to the states, as well as the $84 million from Maine, and so on and so forth. How about all of that? None of that is being addressed. Okay? And so how about the fact that the huge embarrassment, if we would simply take the WikiLeaks and read them and then talk about them as if they were real because they are real, then you would have to put Hillary in jail.
But that's the point. They're there to make sure we don't read them. And by the way, where is proof of life for Julian Assange?
Well, that's the next thing I was going to say.
Okay. I want to, we need to, citizens around the world, give proof of life of Julian.
Julian Assange, they now say, will be here on Tuesday. What? What are they saying? The United States of America is going to extradite Julian Assange? He's not an American, you idiots!
I think it's covered.
What do you think you're going to do? You're going to get him?
I think he's escaped the embassy, and they don't know what to do about that.
Here's the deal. They know that he knows, whether it was Seth Rich, Imran Awan, Guccifer 2.0, Alexei Gubarev, or whoever was the hacker, Brian Pagliano, or perhaps the Chinese, or whoever. They know. Because why? Julian Assange knows where he got the WikiLeaks from Podesta, Hillary, and from the DNC server.
Oh, they could ask him.com. I mean, everybody on the face of the earth knows.
I didn't list another 4 or 5
okay.
that they have accused him of. Kim.com is one of them, and you're so right. It's so boring. It takes my breath away. I don't even keep track anymore.
We just have to watch this stupid Mueller thing.
How many people are they going to accuse of a hack when it wasn't a hack, it was a breach? And the breach, we know who the breach was, more than likely, because we know that the breaches were happening all over the place. So flip a coin on who you want the breacher to be. But the point is, Julian Assange, they say, now is going to come. Well, Julian Assange can settle the case, if they believe him, and of course he can produce the evidence, of who he got the WikiLeaks of the Podesta and Hillary emails from. And this would be a wonderful thing, and this would blow the case wide open, because at this point it's only speculation. And Julian Assange knows many secrets. And so if Julian Assange does a deal...
If he's alive, because, I wouldn't, if I were Julian, I wouldn't trust any kind of transportation on your way to the United States if you happen to be making that trip.
Yeah, because he might just accidentally die.
Well, that QRS-11 or some other accident because he knows too much.
Yep.
Okay, shall we move on?
It'd be another life that would be ruined as just trying to find out one of the secrets of Hillary Clinton.
The next tweet is about the polls are open in Mississippi, and Trump was there to support Cindy Hyde-Smith to go to Washington, so that's great. I hope everybody went out and voted today. But let's move into the next two tweets. It's all about General Motors, and I'm going to read these two tweets together. Very disappointed with General Motors and their CEO, Mary Barra, for closing plants in Ohio, Michigan, and Maryland. Nothing being closed in Mexico and China. The U.S. saved General Motors, and this is the thanks we get. We are now looking at cutting all GM subsidies, including for electric cars. General Motors made a big China bet years ago when they built plants there and in Mexico. Don't think that bet is going to pay off. I'm here to protect America's workers.
I don't know how GM can be so stupid. I mean, really?
Well, they're globalists. Maybe they just should be globalist motors.
What do you think the people in Ohio, Michigan, and Maryland think of that, General Motors? Do you think we're going to buy your cars after that? Do you think that now we don't notice because of Trump that we are in a war and you're on one side or you're on the other? You need to choose your side. But Trump, he's going to do you in. He's going to take away your subsidies. And people don't understand the massive amounts of subsidies on all levels of manufacturing in this country, especially when you're as big as General Motors, or you're one of the big tech companies, or you're Sprint or Horizon or whatever. In some of these cases, they're almost monopolies. In the case of GM, without us, without we the people, they wouldn't exist. And so they need to make some better choices. They need to decide, are they going to be part of the U.S.-Mexican war that's going on? Or are they going to be part of the U.S.-China war that's going on? These two countries are at war with us. Maybe GM doesn't understand that. We are at war with Mexico. We are at war with China. These are national security issues. These are international commerce issues. These are huge issues, as big as, in some cases, small skirmishes and wars, except for the loss of life. But in some cases, there are loss of life concerning these things. So, for instance, the people rushing into this country through our southern border to try to get the jobs that just went to China and Mexico. So stay in Mexico, folks. You're going to get some new jobs working for GM. But guess what, GM? You're not going to get we the people's money anymore. And thank you, Trump, like you did with the UN, like you've done with so many countries, like you've done with so many companies, so many corporations. You make them pay up, and you also pull back the money that they have been vampirizing America with.
There was an article that I had read, and it was one that, was in passing, so I'd have to go back and find it. So just take this as unsubstantiated at this point, but I think it fits in, that GM is going to be making these driverless cars. Now, folks, we need to resist this, because once you start driving these cars that have no drivers, somebody behind that electronics box can keep you from moving transportation-wise. It is a way to control your movement. And if your social credit score, if it rolls into effect, is too low, you might walk out in your garage to get in your driverless car and you can't go anywhere. You see, we've shown you the big plan of how they want to roll out this digital tyranny over the face of the earth. And what we have to do is we have to resist. Do not put those visors on your face, for example. Don't even ever put those on. Don't buy a driverless car, especially if it's from globalist motors. And we have to... Did you see that horrific picture of that infant where the mother had given the child, an infant, a cell phone? All the lights are lit up and the child is happy. When the mother took away the cell phone, the child just absolutely had a fit. I mean, we have to resist this technology of these young developing minds. We need to resist it in all ways possible.
Absolutely, Betsy. And it's already happening in China, thanks to Eric Schmidt and the Dragonfly program, which is already being implemented here in America. It's a lie that it's only going to be implemented in China in 2 years. They're arresting people right now. We saw a film just yesterday where the person is showing, no, I can't take any trains. I can't take any transportation whatsoever because of my social credit score. It's already in place, folks.
In China, they're going to roll it out here. They need to control us.
And these are drugs. These telephones, these computers, these are drugs. Don't let them near your children. It's instantaneous that the dopamine hits and that the cortisol here rushes to the brain, the adrenaline rushes to the brain, start to transform and change the mind of the child the second they start using them.
This child is a baby. And what's going to happen to its developmental stages of the brain if it's in front of these digital things? It was just appalling. It's a form of child abuse.
That child's brain will become more mechanical than it will become human as long as they continue to use their cell phone and their iPad as their babysitter.
And so when you're out Christmas shopping and you see all these cool gadgets that say they operate without you doing anything, it turns on this, it does that, resist. In fact, you might spend your holiday season unplugging these devices in your home.